I never thought the person who would destroy me would be the one who shared my blood. But on that Friday night, under the glittering chandeliers of Beverly Hills' most expensive restaurant, I watched my sister's diamond necklace catch the light, and I finally understood that some things that shine the brightest are actually the most hollow inside. My name is Emma Richardson, and this is the story of how I went from being my family's doormat to the woman who finally stood up and burned down the house of lies my sister had built. It started, as most family disasters do, at a dinner that no one really wanted to attend. My husband David and I arrived early at Maestro's, a upscale Italian restaurant in downtown Los Angeles, where our family gathered every month for what my mother optimistically called quality time together. The reality was far less heartwarming. These dinners had become a stage for my older sister Charlotte to parade her supposedly perfect life while systematically tearing down mine. David squeezed my hand as we walked through the heavy glass doors. He knew what was coming. We always knew what was coming. The soft jazz music playing in the background did nothing to ease the knot forming in my stomach. We were seated at our usual table near the back, one with enough space for 6 people and enough privacy for Charlotte to launch her verbal attacks without too many witnesses. I smoothed down my navy blue dress, a classic piece I had owned for 3 years. It was elegant, timeless, and comfortable. David told me I looked beautiful in it, and I believed him. But I also knew that Charlotte would have something to say about it. She always did. 20 minutes later, Charlotte swept into the restaurant like she owned the place. Her husband Marcus trailed behind her, carrying her designer purse like a well-trained assistant. Charlotte's red gown probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, and the diamond necklace around her throat caught every beam of light in the room, sending sparkles across the white tablecloth. She looked like she had just stepped off a yacht in Monaco, not a Friday evening dinner with her family in Los Angeles. Before she even sat down, Charlotte's eyes swept over me with that familiar look of disdain mixed with pity. She kissed the air near my cheeks without actually touching me, then settled into her chair with a dramatic sigh, as if the effort of existing in my presence was exhausting. The waiter came over immediately, clearly recognizing Charlotte from previous visits. She ordered the most expensive bottle of champagne on the menu without consulting anyone else at the table. Marcus said nothing, just nodded along like a puppet. My parents arrived shortly after, and my mother's face lit up when she saw Charlotte, then dimmed slightly when she looked at me. I had gotten used to being the less shiny daughter. Dinner started civilly enough. We ordered food, made small talk about the weather and traffic. But I could feel Charlotte's eyes on me, cataloging every detail, preparing her ammunition. She took a long sip of champagne, set down her glass with deliberate precision, and then she struck. "Oh, Emma, honey," Charlotte said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Are you still wearing that dress? I remember you wore it to Thanksgiving 2 years ago. And didn't you have it on at Aunt Patricia's birthday last spring?" The table went quiet. David's hand found mine under the table again, his thumb rubbing gentle circles on my palm. I took a breath, counted to 3 like my therapist had taught me, and smiled. "Yes, Charlotte, I am still wearing this dress. It's one of my favorites. I believe in investing in quality pieces that last, rather than buying things just to throw them away after one wear." I kept my voice even, pleasant even. Charlotte laughed, a tinkling sound that made me think of breaking glass. "Quality pieces? Emma, darling, there's quality and then there's just being cheap. I mean, David's business must be doing well enough to afford at least a new dress for family dinners, right? Or are things not going as well as you pretend?" Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his seat. My father cleared his throat but said nothing. My mother studied her menu like it contained the secrets of the universe. David's jaw tightened, but I squeezed his hand. Not yet. I knew there would be a time to fight back, but this was not it. "Actually," I said, keeping that same calm tone, "David's architectural firm just won a contract for a sustainable housing project downtown. We're doing quite well. But we also believe in being financially responsible and not wasting money on superficial things." I let my eyes drop to Charlotte's necklace as I said it. The diamonds probably cost more than a small car. I watched her hand fly up to touch it, a defensive gesture she tried to disguise as casual adjustment. "Superficial?" Charlotte's voice rose slightly, losing some of that fake sweetness. "Is that what you call success, Emma? Superficial? Some of us work hard and deserve to enjoy the fruits of our labor. Marcus just closed a deal worth over $1 million in Beverly Hills real estate. Maybe if David applied himself more, you could afford to look like you actually belong in places like this." The barb hit its mark. I felt the sting of it, the familiar burn of humiliation. But what hurt more was watching my mother nod slightly, as if Charlotte had made a valid point. My father just took another sip of his wine, determined to ignore the tension crackling across the table like static electricity. David leaned forward then, his voice low but firm. "The strength of a man isn't measured by the numbers on his contracts, Charlotte. It's measured by how he protects and respects his family. Something I think you might have forgotten." Charlotte's eyes flashed dangerously. "Oh, David, you're such a poet. How romantic." Too bad poetry doesn't pay for houses in the hills or boats in Marina del Rey. Too bad it doesn't get you a table at restaurants like this without a reservation. Too bad it doesn't matter in the real world. She drained her champagne glass and signaled for another bottle. The waiter rushed over, clearly uncomfortable with the tension at our table. As he poured, Charlotte launched into a long story about her latest shopping trip to Paris, the private tour of a fashion house, the custom dress she had commissioned. Every sentence was designed to highlight what she had and what I did not. I sat there, my untouched pasta growing cold in front of me, and felt something shift inside my chest. It was not anger, not yet. It was something colder, something more dangerous. It was clarity. For years, I had made excuses for Charlotte's behavior. She was insecure. She needed validation. She didn't mean it the way it sounded. But sitting there, watching her perform for an audience of our exhausted family, I realized the truth. Charlotte meant every word. She enjoyed hurting me. And she had been doing it for so long that everyone else had just accepted it as normal. The dinner dragged on for another hour. By the time dessert arrived, I had made a decision. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do yet, but I knew that something had to change. I could not spend the rest of my life being Charlotte's punching bag, her example of what not to be, her proof that she was better, shinier, more successful. As we left the restaurant, Charlotte made one more comment, this time loud enough for the couple at the next table to hear. Well, Emma, maybe next time you can treat yourself to something new to wear. Or at least let David make enough money to do it for you. David's arm around my waist tightened. I saw the rage in his eyes, but I shook my head. We walked to our car in silence, and it was not until we were driving home on the dark Los Angeles highways that David finally spoke. We don't have to keep doing this, he said quietly. We don't have to subject ourselves to her abuse every month. I looked out the window at the city lights blurring past. I know, I said. And we're not going to anymore. David glanced at me, surprised by the steel in my voice. What do you mean? I mean that Charlotte has been getting away with this for too long, and it's time someone reminded her that the people she steps on might eventually step back. I didn't elaborate, but David knew me well enough not to push. He just reached over and took my hand, and we drove the rest of the way home in a silence that felt less like defeat and more like the calm before a very necessary storm. The next day was Saturday, and my mother called in the morning to invite us to a barbecue at Aunt Julia's house in Malibu. Aunt Julia was my father's sister, a kind woman who had always treated David and me with genuine warmth. Unlike my mother, who clearly favored Charlotte, Aunt Julia saw through my sister's performance. She had made comments before about Charlotte's behavior, subtle hints that she disapproved, but she never caused family drama by saying anything directly. I almost declined the invitation. The thought of spending another afternoon watching Charlotte show off was exhausting. But then I thought about it more carefully, and I realized this might be exactly the opportunity I needed. We'll be there, I told my mother. What time should we arrive? David raised an eyebrow when I hung up the phone. Are you sure about this? Very sure, I said, because today is the day Charlotte's house of cards starts to fall. I spent the morning in my home office, going through files I had kept locked in my desk drawer for months. Bank statements, emails, legal documents. I had not looked at them in a while because looking at them made me too angry, too hurt. But now I needed them. Now they were going to serve a purpose. 6 months ago, Marcus had come to David in desperation. Charlotte did not know about it. She thought her husband was a real estate mogul, closing million-dollar deals left and right. The truth was very different. Marcus's company had been failing for over a year. He had made bad investments, trusted the wrong partners, and found himself drowning in debt with lawsuits piling up faster than he could handle them. He had begged David for help, not as a loan between family members, but as a straight business investment. He had promised that with $75,000, he could save his company, pay off his most pressing debts, and turn things around. He had even shown David the paperwork, the court documents, the threatening letters from creditors. It was all real, all documented, all notarized. David had wanted to say no. We had that money saved for our future, for maybe starting a family, for investing in David's own firm. But Marcus had cried, actually cried, sitting at our kitchen table at 11 o'clock at night after calling in a panic. He said if Charlotte found out the truth, it would destroy their marriage. He said he would pay us back within 6 months, with interest. David, being the good man he is, had agreed, not because he trusted Marcus, but because he wanted to help. Because he believed in giving people second chances, and because, despite everything Charlotte put me through, I had asked him to do it. I had believed that maybe, just maybe, helping Marcus would somehow make Charlotte soften toward us. How naive I had been. The money had transferred 6 months ago. Marcus had signed papers, acknowledging the debt, promising repayment, and then nothing. No payments, no updates, no acknowledgement. And Charlotte had continued her charade, continued spending money on designer clothes and diamond necklaces and expensive dinners, all while her husband's company was being held together by our money. I printed out everything. Bank transfers, emails, the signed agreement, everything. I put it all in a folder and slipped it into my purse. Then I got dressed in jeans and a simple white blouse, pulled my hair back in a ponytail, and told David it was time to go. The drive to Malibu was beautiful. The Pacific Coast Highway stretched out before us, the ocean glittering under the afternoon sunday. Aunt Julia's house was perched on a cliff overlooking the water, a stunning property that she had bought decades ago before Malibu became impossibly expensive. It was the kind of place where you could breathe, where the sound of waves drowned out all the noise in your head. When we arrived, the barbecue was already in full swing. Family members were scattered across the large deck and lawn, kids running around with beach balls, adults standing in clusters with drinks in their hands. The smell of grilled meat and salt air mixed together in a way that should have been pleasant, but instead made my stomach churn with anticipation. Charlotte was impossible to miss. She stood near the railing overlooking the ocean, wearing a white designer sundress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Oversized sunglasses perched on her head, a glass of rosé in her hand. She was holding court with a group of relatives, her voice carrying across the deck as she told yet another story about her fabulous life. David and I grabbed drinks from the cooler and found a spot near the grill where Uncle Tom was flipping burgers. He gave us a warm smile and asked about David's work, actually interested in the answer, unlike most of my family. We chatted for a few minutes, but my attention kept drifting to Charlotte. She had spotted us and was now looking in our direction, a smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. I knew that look. She was preparing for round 2, getting ready to continue what she had started at dinner the night before. I could practically see her brain working, crafting the perfect insult, the most cutting observation. I waited. I let her come to me. And she did, of course, because Charlotte could never resist an opportunity to assert her dominance. "Emma," she called out, loud enough that several people turned to look. "I'm so glad you could make it. I was just telling everyone about my trip to Europe next month. Marcus booked us a private villa in Tuscany. Have you and David ever been to Italy?" She knew we had not. She knew exactly what she was doing. "Not yet," I said evenly. "We've been focused on other priorities." Charlotte laughed. "Priorities, of course. Well, some of us prioritize experiences and living life to the fullest, but I suppose everyone has different definitions of success, right?" A few people laughed politely, uncomfortable but not willing to intervene. Aunt Julia was watching from across the deck, her expression disapproving, but she was talking to my mother and could not break away without being rude. Charlotte continued, emboldened by the attention. "You know, I was thinking, Emma, maybe you should ask David for a raise, or better yet, maybe he should think about moving into a more lucrative field. Architecture is so uncertain these days. Marcus always says that real estate is where the real money is. That's how you build wealth, not by designing buildings that might never get built." Marcus, standing slightly behind Charlotte, looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him whole. His face was pale, his eyes darting between me and his wife. He knew what was coming. He had to know. I took a sip of my iced tea, set the glass down on the railing, and looked directly at Charlotte. The moment had arrived. I had spent months swallowing my pride, accepting her abuse, making excuses. But standing there, with the ocean behind me and my family watching, I felt a strange calm settle over me. "Charlotte," I said, my voice clear and steady, "since you're so interested in sharing stories about money and success, maybe you'd like to tell everyone here about how Marcus closed those million-dollar deals you're always bragging about." Charlotte's smile faltered slightly, but she recovered quickly. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the $75,000 that David invested in Marcus's failing company 6 months ago, the money that saved him from bankruptcy and lawsuits. The money that kept him from losing everything, including the ability to pay his employees." The deck went silent. Even the kids seemed to sense something was happening and stopped running around. The only sound was the crash of waves against the rocks below and the distant cry of seagulls. Charlotte's glass of rosé slipped from her fingers. It shattered on the wooden deck, pink liquid spreading like a stain, glass shards glittering in the sunlight. Several people gasped. "Marcus looked like he might pass out." "That's not true," Charlotte said, but her voice lacked conviction. "You're lying." I reached into my purse and pulled out the folder. I walked over to the nearest table and laid out the documents one by one. Bank transfers showing the exact amount leaving our account and entering Marcus's company account. Emails between Marcus and David discussing the dire financial situation. The signed agreement, notarized and legal, where Marcus acknowledged the debt and promised repayment within 6 months. "It's all here," I said. Every transaction, every email, every promise Marcus made. He came to us begging for help because his company was on the verge of collapse. Because he couldn't pay his debts, couldn't meet payroll, couldn't keep the lights on. And we helped him, Charlotte. We gave him the money that saved his business, the money that's been allowing you to live this fantasy life of luxury and success. People crowded around the table, picking up the papers, reading them. I saw shock on their faces, confusion, anger. Aunt Julia pushed through the crowd, looked at the documents, then looked at Charlotte with something that might have been pity or might have been disgust. Charlotte was shaking. Her carefully applied makeup could not hide the fact that all the color had drained from her face. She looked at Marcus, who was standing frozen, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Marcus? Charlotte's voice was small now, stripped of all its usual bravado. Tell them this isn't true. Tell them she's making this up. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. It's true, he whispered. I'm sorry, Charlotte. I didn't want you to know. I didn't want anyone to know. The words hung in the air like a bomb that had just detonated. Charlotte swayed on her feet, and for a moment, I thought she might actually faint. My mother rushed to her side, but Charlotte pushed her away. No, Charlotte said. No, this can't be real. We're successful. We're doing well. The Beverly Hills deal, the clients, the money. Was all smoke and mirrors, I said, and I was surprised by how little satisfaction I felt. I had imagined this moment would feel triumphant, victorious. Instead, it just felt necessary. The company has been struggling for over a year. Marcus has been barely keeping it afloat, borrowing from everyone he can. And our money, Charlotte, the money David worked hard to earn and save, that's what's been funding your designer dresses and your diamond necklaces and your trips to Europe. Charlotte looked down at the necklace around her throat like she had never seen it before. Her hands came up to touch it, trembling, and then she ripped it off, the clasp breaking, tiny diamonds scattering across the deck like tears. I didn't know, she said, and for the first time in my life, I heard real vulnerability in her voice. I swear I didn't know. But you didn't ask either, did you? David said, speaking for the first time. His voice was not angry, just sad. You were so busy spending and showing off that you never once questioned where the money was really coming from. You never wondered why Marcus was stressed, why he worked such long hours, why he looked so tired all the time, because you were too focused on maintaining an image to see the reality. Marcus finally moved, reaching for Charlotte's arm, but she jerked away from him like his touch burned. Don't, she said. Don't you dare touch me. She turned back to me, and I saw something break in her eyes. It was not just embarrassment or shock. It was the realization that everything she had built her identity around was a lie, that all her superiority, all her mockery of my simple life and modest means, had been based on nothing but borrowed money and borrowed time. You planned this, Charlotte said, and there was accusation in her voice, a desperate attempt to make this my fault instead of hers. You waited until we were all here, in front of everyone, to humiliate me. No, I said firmly. You humiliated yourself, Charlotte. I just stopped protecting you from the consequences of your own choices. I spent years letting you tear me down, letting you make me feel small and inadequate, letting you use me as a stepping stone to make yourself feel better. And I did it because you're my sister, because I loved you, because I kept hoping you would change. I paused, looking around at all the faces watching us. Family members I had known my whole life, people who had witnessed Charlotte's treatment of me for years and said nothing, done nothing. But last night, when you sat there in that restaurant and tried to humiliate me in front of strangers, when you attacked my husband's worth and my choices, I realized something. You weren't going to change. You were never going to stop, unless someone made you face the truth. So yes, I brought the evidence here today, not to humiliate you, but to end this. To end the lies, the manipulation, the constant need to tear others down to build yourself up. Charlotte's face crumpled. Tears started running down her cheeks, taking mascara with them in black rivers. She looked around wildly, as if searching for an ally, someone who would take her side. But no one moved. Even my mother, who had always preferred Charlotte, looked uncertain and troubled. I need to go, Charlotte said suddenly. She turned and ran across the deck, her designer sundress billowing behind her, her bare feet slapping against the wood. She fumbled with her car keys, dropped them, picked them up, and then she was gone, her expensive car roaring to life and speeding down the driveway. Marcus stood there for another moment, looking at all of us, then down at the scattered papers on the table. I'm sorry, he said to no one in particular. Then he too left, running after his wife, leaving behind the shattered remains of the life they had been pretending to live. The barbecue did not recover. People drifted away in small groups, some stopping to squeeze my hand or pat David's shoulder. Aunt Julia came over and hugged me tightly. You did the right thing, honey, she said quietly. That girl needed a reality check, and she needed it years ago. My parents approached last. My father looked tired, older somehow than he had an hour ago. My mother's eyes were red, though I did not think she had been crying for me. Emma, my mother started, then stopped. She did not seem to know what to say. I'm not sorry, I said before she could continue. I'm not sorry for telling the truth. I'm not sorry for defending myself and my husband. And I'm not sorry for refusing to be Charlotte's victim anymore. My father nodded slowly. We should have stepped in sooner. We should have seen what was happening and stopped it. That's on us. It was not the full apology I wanted, but it was more than I had expected. I accepted it with a nod, and David and I left shortly after, driving back down the coast toward Los Angeles as the sun began to set over the Pacific. That night, lying in bed, David asked me if I felt guilty. I thought about it for a long time before answering. No, I finally said. I feel free. But of course, it was not over. With people like Charlotte, it's never that simple. The following week was chaos. Charlotte, rather than accepting responsibility or confronting her problems, launched a counterattack. She took to social media with the fury of someone who had lost everything and had nothing left to lose. Her Facebook posts started appearing on Monday morning. Long, rambling paragraphs about family betrayal, about jealous siblings who could not stand to see others succeed, about lies and manipulation. She painted herself as the victim of my vindictive nature, claiming I had always been envious of her success and had fabricated evidence to destroy her marriage. By Tuesday, the posts had spread to Instagram, accompanied by carefully curated photos of her and Marcus from happier times, with captions about how families should support each other, not tear each other down. She tagged mutual friends, distant relatives, anyone who might read and believe her version of events. Wednesday brought the worst of it. A local gossip blog, the kind that thrived on scandal and rarely checked facts, ran a story with the headline, "Sisters at War. Did Emma Richardson fabricate financial documents to destroy her sister's marriage?" The article was poorly written and full of speculation, but it included photos of both of us and enough details to make people curious. My phone would not stop ringing. Friends calling to ask if it was true, co-workers who had seen the posts, even old high school acquaintances reaching out with fake concern that was really just nosiness. David's firm started getting calls too, people asking about his finances, about the alleged loan, about whether he was in legal trouble. I watched it all unfold with a strange sense of detachment. Charlotte was doing exactly what I had expected her to do. She was a performer, and when her stage had been taken away, she had simply built a new one online. But what she had not counted on was that I had documentation. I had proof. I had the truth on my side, and truth, eventually, is harder to fight than lies. David wanted to respond immediately, to fight fire with fire, but I convinced him to wait, to let Charlotte exhaust herself with her accusations. Sure enough, by Thursday, people were starting to ask questions. How had Marcus really been affording their lifestyle? Why were there public records showing his company's financial troubles? Why would Emma make up such specific, detailed lies? That's when I decided to stop being defensive and go on the offense. On Friday morning, exactly 1 week after the barbecue, I sat down at my computer and wrote a post of my own. Not an emotional rant, not a defensive justification, but a clear, factual statement accompanied by every piece of evidence I had. I posted the bank transfers with account numbers partially redacted for privacy, but clearly showing the amount and date. I posted screenshots of Marcus's emails to David, including one where he specifically wrote, "Please don't tell Charlotte about this. She'll leave me if she knows how bad things really are." I posted the signed, notarized agreement. I even posted excerpts from public court records showing the lawsuits Marcus's company had been facing. Then I wrote a simple statement underneath it all. I did not want to do this publicly. I wanted to handle this within our family, privately and with dignity. But when someone spends a week calling you a liar and trying to destroy your reputation, you have no choice but to defend yourself with facts. These documents speak for themselves. My husband and I helped Marcus when he came to us desperate and afraid. We did it out of kindness, out of family loyalty, out of the belief that we were doing the right thing. We asked for nothing except honesty and respect in return. Instead, we got attacks and accusations. I hope this clears up any confusion about what really happened. And I hope that going forward, we can all learn from this situation and choose honesty over image, truth over pretense. I posted it at 10 in the morning. By noon, it had been shared over 300 times. By evening, the gossip blog that had run the original hit piece had posted a retraction and an update with the new evidence. By the next morning, Charlotte's social media accounts had gone silent. But the fallout was just beginning. Once the truth was out there, documented and undeniable, other people started coming forward. Former employees of Marcus's company posting about unpaid wages, business partners sharing stories of broken deals and unfulfilled contracts, clients who had never received the services they had paid for. It turned out that Marcus's problems went much deeper than I had known. The $75,000 David had given him had been a temporary bandage on a wound that needed surgery. The company was not just struggling, it was built on a foundation of lies and mismanagement. And now, with everything exposed to sunlight, it began to completely unravel. Local news outlets picked up the story, not because of the family drama, but because of the potential fraud involved. Reporters started investigating Marcus's business practices, his clients, his financial records. What they found was damning. Within 2 weeks, there were calls for formal investigations. Within a month, Marcus was facing multiple lawsuits and potential criminal charges. Through it all, Charlotte remained silent on social media, but I heard from relatives that she had left Marcus, moved out of their expensive house, and was staying with a friend. The diamonds, the designer clothes, the fancy car, all of it had been repossessed or sold to pay debts. Everything she had based her identity on had evaporated like morning fog. I wish I could say I felt satisfaction watching it happen, but mostly, I just felt tired and sad. Because no matter how much Charlotte had hurt me, she was still my sister. And watching her lose everything, even things she had never really deserved, was harder than I had imagined it would be. 3 months after the barbecue, on a random Tuesday afternoon, a letter arrived at our house. It was addressed to me in handwriting I recognized immediately. Charlotte's perfect, careful script. I stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. Part of me wanted to throw it away unread. What could she possibly have to say that would matter now? But curiosity won, and I carefully tore open the seal. The letter was short, written on plain paper, not the expensive monogram stationery Charlotte used to use. "Emma," it began. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't think I deserve forgiveness. But I needed you to know that I understand now. I understand what I did to you, what I've been doing to you for years. I understand that I was cruel, that I used you as a mirror to make myself look better, that I took out my own insecurities on the one person who should have been my closest ally. I've lost everything. My marriage is over. Marcus is probably going to prison. I'm working as a sales clerk at a department store, living in a studio apartment I can barely afford. All the things I thought mattered, the money, the status, the appearance of success, it's all gone. And you know what's strange? I feel more like myself now than I have in years. I was so afraid of being ordinary, Emma, so terrified of being just another person living a normal life. I watched you choose a modest, authentic life with David, and instead of respecting that choice, I resented it. Because deep down, I knew you had something I didn't. You had real happiness. You had a partner who loved you for who you were, not what you could provide or how you looked. You had peace. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, and I'm not asking for your friendship. I just wanted you to know that you were right, about all of it. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Charlotte, I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully, put it back in the envelope, and placed it in a drawer in my desk. I did not respond. I did not know what I would say if I did. Part of me wanted to believe that Charlotte had really changed, that losing everything had given her perspective. But another part of me remembered all the years of abuse, all the times I had made excuses for her, all the opportunities she had to be better and had chosen cruelty instead. David asked me if I was going to write back. I told him I didn't know, that I needed time to think about it. He kissed my forehead and told me whatever I decided would be the right choice. That was the difference between David and Marcus, between my marriage and Charlotte's. David supported my decisions without trying to control them. He loved me without conditions or performance requirements. 2 weeks after receiving Charlotte's letter, I found out I was pregnant. David and I had been trying for a year, and I had almost given up hope. When the test came back positive, I cried for 20 minutes straight while David held me, both of us laughing through our tears. We decided to move. Not far, just to a quieter neighborhood on the outskirts of Los Angeles, a place with good schools and parks and streets where kids could ride bikes safely. We found a small house with a backyard and a porch swing, nothing fancy, but ours. David's firm was thriving, the sustainable housing project had been approved and was generating more business, and we could finally afford to build the life we had always wanted. The legal situation with Marcus dragged on for months. Eventually, he pleaded guilty to fraud and was sentenced to 3 years in prison. His company was completely dissolved, assets liquidated to pay back creditors and former employees. I felt no joy in his downfall, only a grim sense that justice had been served. My relationship with my parents slowly began to heal. My father called every few weeks, usually just to chat about nothing important, but I understood what he was really doing. He was trying to rebuild a bridge he should never have let collapse. My mother took longer, but she eventually invited David and me to lunch, just the 3 of us. She did not apologize outright, but she acknowledged that she had not protected me the way a mother should. It was not everything I wanted, but it was a start. I did not see Charlotte for almost a year. Then one Saturday, while shopping for baby supplies at a department store in downtown Los Angeles, I saw her. She was behind the counter in the women's clothing section, helping an elderly customer find a dress in the right size. She was wearing a simple black uniform, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, no makeup except for a touch of mascara and lip gloss. She looked tired but somehow younger, less polished but more real. When she glanced up and our eyes met, I saw a flash of panic cross her face. She clearly wanted to disappear, to hide behind a rack of clothes and pretend she had not seen me. But she could not, because I was walking toward her, and the elderly customer had just left, and there was nowhere to run. "Hi, Charlotte," I said quietly. "Hi." Her voice was barely a whisper. She looked down at the counter, fidgeting with a pen. "I got your letter." She looked up sharply, surprise and fear mixing in her expression. "Oh, I didn't expect. I mean, you didn't have to respond." I just wanted you to know." "I know," I said, "and I appreciate you writing it." That took courage. Charlotte laughed, but it was not her old laugh, the one that sounded like breaking glass. This one was softer, more genuine. Courage. That's a generous way to put it. Desp.